good day to stay on. Now's your chance. Arsenal City!
Hello and welcome back to the TNC podcast, episode number 75, and we've got Norfolk's finest broadcaster back and poised, ready to go, Mr. Nick Conrad. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again. And I've been desperate to come back on this. How long was it? A year ago?
It was May. You last came on. I checked it.
What, May 2018?
Yeah.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Gosh, okay. Well, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I've never had so much fun in a man's bedroom. so I thought.
Studio.
I don't believe that, Nick.
Studio. So I thought I'm coming back on.
No, very good.
So I'm delighted to be here.
The bed is all made up just for you. You've brought a gift. This is very kind of you. Just talk me through what you've got us here, because we've had some lovely gifts in recent weeks.
I'm going to be honest.
Seashells.
Seashells, yeah. I'm going to be honest because I had to stop to buy them. And a friend actually bought me some seashells.
This stinks of Waitrose.
It's not Waitrose. It's not Waitrose. And there's a theory behind this. Actually, I did tell you when I came in the door, and I thought I shouldn't have told you this, but these actually come from Lidl. Now, Lidl originates in which country?
Germany.
You don't say anymore.
There we go.
So there you go.
Although,
There's a method in my madness.
Slightly, they're Belgian chocolates.
Bollocks to that, I know, but Lidl is in Germany.
Amazing. Lidl is, yes, indeed. Last time we spoke, it was May. I think Chris has been on your fantastic radio show since. We spoke a lot about investment last time we were on. Where does the club stand this time, and how has the club progressed since the last time we spoke?
Classic Conrad.
Let's forget what I said last time round, because it was bollocks. and let's just move on with where we're at now. I think, actually, in fairness, a lot of the things that I drew on last time clearly haven't come true. I think, if I remember correctly, I was moaning and quite frustrated with where the club was at. I didn't ever have a crack at with Daniel Farker and his team. I could see what they were trying to do, but I was frustrated with the board. I think that they have bought extremely cleverly. I think that fans like myself should have been more patient. We're now seeing the fruit of the labour, and I am absolutely delighted to say that there was so much of what I thought was happening last year at the club that was wrong. And I cannot tell you how pleased I am to say that. I was totally and utterly wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where we are now, I'm purring. And where we were when I last came on this, I was not purring. I was a desperately unhappy cat. And now I'm a desperately happy cat. And it's like lapping up cream, isn't it? It's just, well, it is, isn't it? It's just. I mean, I turn up to that. I literally skip over that bridge going down there with a smile on my face. And I remember saying to my wife last year, because it is a bit of a drag. So I've got 3 kids, and so
kids is a drag, or
well, depends how you look at it.
My face is going to hurt by the end of this podcast.
But you sit there, and I look at the clock, and it's getting to 11 o'clock, and I look at the 1:40, and I remember saying last year, I just cannot be bothered. I love going with my friend Big Steve and his dad. I squeeze between Big Steve and his dad.
Is he the one that calls it's like watching Barcelona?
No, that's the guy behind me. No, that's the guy behind me. Somebody actually did pick up on that and said, I know exactly who you're talking about, so I'll be careful what I say this time round. No, I sit with a guy called Big Steve, who sits on my left-hand side, who's actually not big at all, and his father, who's slightly bigger.
Is that Big D's dad?
No.
Big Steve?
Big D.
Dennis Rabeni, of course.
Oh, Big D. No. No, if it was, then the age gap would be a bit of a slight problem.
So anyway, we lost track of Big Steve. Where was this going? You were getting slightly bored, and now you're.
Yes. So I love sitting next to Big Steve and his father in a puffer jacket. However, I often feel slightly guilty that I'm leaving the kids behind. And last year I thought,
with you.
What? No, well, do you know, it's funny, I had this conversation recently. I'd love to take my Rupee and Arian to the toilet. There's no way I could... Sorry, not to the toilet. Sorry, to the football. Sorry, it's been a really long day. Sorry. To the football. But how do you do the toilets? How do you do the toilet? Well, you can't...
You have to take your kids down.
Yeah, but there's only 2 cubicles there, and I mean, I'd miss the start of the second half. I'd have to go.
You just don't want to miss the game.
I don't want to miss the game.
Just send them off.
I don't want to miss the game. I don't want to miss the game. So, and there's no way to change a nappy in there either. So,
okay.
I think we'll wait until they're at an old enough age to deal with themselves in that department, and then I'll take them.
Just chuck them in the snake pit and let them look after themselves.
Well, if not, I'll have to go in the family enclosure, and that's like sitting in a library. So, I wouldn't want to go there.
Anyway, it's certainly going well, Chris.
Yep.
The last game, Leeds United 1, Norwich City 3. That was rather magnificent, wasn't it?
I'll get it in early. Did go on TalkSport 2 and say to a Leeds fan, we're going to win 3-1.
You did?
And it happened. I can't believe it. I was in shell shock watching it unfold. We were so clinical. But with we didn't have that much possession. I thought that Leeds were the better team in the first half, despite the fact that we'd gone 2 up. And I think that we looked dangerous, yet you thought it was on a knife edge the whole time. It was funny because it was 88 minutes in, and we were like, right, now we've won. But it took us 88 minutes to accept the fact that because we're Norwich fans. Yeah. But I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was emotional. I thought that the boys...
What were you emotional about?
Because our expectations have been managed so well this season that I think that the Leeds game was, this is it. This is real now. I think that we've all kind of played along a little bit with, we can do it, Fark life this, Fark life that. I think we believe now, and it was the players on the pitch, and it was Daniel Farke's tactics, don't forget as well, that implemented that. So I'm emotional about the fact that it is happening. It is happening. It's as simple as that. We said before the Sheffield game, the next 3 games are huge. And if you're still I said at that point, if we're still in the top 2 at the end of the Leeds game, we've got a chance of automatics. Well, let me put it this way, Jack. If we win against Ipswich, we will win this league.
Wow. Nick, what struck me at the weekend was the sort of the sense of maturity about us, because I think against Sheffield United we were magnificent for parts. There was that slight bit of naivety about us. Yes. Completely different at Leeds, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think actually that's been our major problem over Christmas. And we went into silly season, especially conceding that 4 against Derby County. That game was depressing and crazy.
Did the floodlights lose us that game really quickly?
Yes, of course it did. Yeah, it did. Absolutely, no doubt about it. We had the momentum, and we could have seen that game out. And we are talking about fine margins. And I think with the Nottingham Forest game, even though it was so exciting, it was amazing to come back from 3-0 down. Again, it was silly season to be 3-0 down in the first place. So I said, and a lot of people disagree with me, what I really want to see is a stodgy 1-0 win or a stodgy 2-0 win. I just want to shut a game out.
Yeah.
And that's why I was really delighted with what's happened since Christmas in a couple of games.
Wasn't it? Birmingham
was fantastic. The second half was just workmanlike, and that's what you need.
Yeah.
So with this game, that's what I loved. And I think you're absolutely right. It did feel like Leeds were on top in the first half, and I didn't quite really believe until later on in the game that we were going to win.
Do you not think that was part of the game plan, though? I agree that they were on top, but it never felt like they were going to score.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Norwich, and there's a way to trouble us, and that's to press high. It's what Chrissy Wilder does. That's what he did very effectively, actually. I was just very interested in deconstructing Sheffield United's game, and I feared that with Leeds. In fact, I spent an hour listening, walking along the Norfolk coast, as you do, listening to a podcast called SU11, LU11, sorry, it's the Leeds postcode.
After the TNC podcast, of course.
Naturally.
Yes.
Naturally. LU11, we'll come on to podcast in a moment. LU11. Absolutely self-indulgent twaddle from the Leeds fans that I listen to. And if you do, present that podcast, it was very entertaining. But you could actually, they were so confident. It was sickening. They were going to win 2-0, 3-0.
Well, why wouldn't you be? They stuffed us 3-0 at Carrow Road, Nick.
Because actually, if you have a look at how they played against Rotherham recently, now, if I was a Leeds fan going into this game, I would not be as confident as they were. Yeah. And it was interesting, the reading of their game. And that's actually the first point I thought we could do them tonight. Because how they were talking about their players, there is something very workmanlike. There's something very practical about the way in which we're setting up at the moment. And I love it. I love it. I don't want 4-3. I don't want 5-4. I want 1-0. That's what I want. Stodgy, boring, get the job done.
And the difference has been, in these last 2 games, Tom Tribal. It's as plain as simple as that. Vrancic is getting the plaudits against Leeds. Stiepermann is getting the plaudits. They both deserve them, but my God, Tom Tribal, unsung hero, he has been ridiculous.
Okay, so
12 out of 10.
What about this weekend then? Tetty or Tribal?
What do you mean, what about this weekend?
Well, who are you going to play?
Well, it's a no-brainer. Of course you're playing Tribal.
Yeah, I agree.
How's Tetty getting back in this team? Tribal... I mean, the proof's in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. I like Tetty. He's a great squad player. But all I'm saying is, I mean, if you look at some of the highlights being bandied about of Tom Tribal at the weekend, it's just ridiculous.
Can I say something about Tetty, though? I mean, because I love Tetty, and I think Tetty's fantastic.
We all love
Of course we do. Of course we do. But Tetty... You make him sound like some kind of Moroccan grain.
That was so Conrad.
Well, we all love Tetty or Tete. But the thing, actually, I get quite frustrated with some of the mistakes that he makes. And what I love about Tribal is that actually Tetty's time, obviously, with the club is coming to an end. Naturally, it's going to because of his age. Tribal, I think, is our future, and players in that ilk. And what he just brings something extra to the game for me. So
He's
I completely
a warrior,
agree.
Isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I bumped into him on the way out of the gym the other day. and he scared me. He shook my hand. I looked into his eyes. I didn't want to make too much contact. I'm quite a confident chap. I was like,
such a tart.
he is so... No, but what I mean is, when you meet someone and they've got an aura, you think, okay, like the Conrad aura. You know, you walk in the door and you go, hello,
Are you feeling it?
Nicky C's in the house. You know, and I had the same thing with Tommy T. I wouldn't want to come up against Tommy Tribal in midfield.
Can we deconstruct that? What is it about him that made you, faint?
He's just a bit scary, isn't he? And I love that.
Cameron Jerome, actually, in terms of the footballers who are pokeable, I say that in the physical, not in the modern, But Cameron Jerome is all muscle, isn't he? He's kind of, if you see him in real life, you want to just, say, hello, Cameron. You just want to stare at his outline because I think that if you put him on a fatometer or whatever they call it, I think he'd come out, he'd probably under 5%. I mean, he's so lean. It's crazy, isn't he? He's like he's been, stripped by that Dutch,
Where are we going here?
It's just nice to see. I'll fill you in here. It's just nice to see a bit of roughness, a bit of rustic, a bit of
pathologist. So that's the word I was looking for. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, that one. I don't know where I'm going now. This is going to be all over the shop tonight, isn't it? Tom Tribal, what a player!
Have you ever put yourself on a body fat meter?
I don't. I have. I did once, and then I went to Argos.
On El's favourite
Good
shop,
evening, on El Hernandez.
Yeah.
I went to Argos and they've got these new things where they turn the year and they said this is actually recently and it's got this thing you can stand on it. It tells you you're fat.
In Argos?
And you can wear something on your wrist and you stand on it. Then it updates you on your phone. It sends you a notification of how fat you are this morning. I thought, why on earth am I going to spend 100 and something quid depressing myself on a daily basis? So I didn't.
Good. Chris, one player who has really stepped up to the mark in recent weeks is Mario Vrancic.
I was just going to say yes to whatever player you said to me then.
7 goals from 10 starts this season. Unbelievable once again.
Mate, phenomenal. I mean, I was picking up the Norfolk Pogba, Marco Stiepermann, on TalkSport 2, but Mario Vrancic is the Norfolk Pirlo. I mean, that performance, there's not been... I can't really remember a player that in the last 2 seasons... I mean, he was... Everything he touched turned to gold. And I've not seen a player with that much perfection in a game of football for a long, long time. Honestly, seriously, I'm not just saying it because of the hype. Mario Vrancic has stunned me. He has. We said it. We said he wasn't good enough. And now look at him.
I think the best thing actually about watching Norwich this year is when we've got a player who's out injured or for whatever reason, somebody else comes in.
Yes.
And we always have this debate. We can't really afford to drop them. I mean, it's just fantastic. I don't actually think that happens with many squads and a lot of that has to come down to the way in which they're drilled. They know the part that they're stepping into, they know how they're meant to play, and they are performing. I agree entirely about Vrancic. He surprised me this year, and especially when Leitner was out, you sit there and you think, oh gosh, here we go, and this is the natural dip. And then all of a sudden you're having this debate thinking,
you're just so comfortable, aren't you?
Exactly. And it's just the way, if you just watch us on the ball, we talked about the metronome last night, it's the tick, it's the way that ball goes around the park and you can read it. And I'm purring. I'm sitting there I'm overcome by a lot of it. It's like watching bloody Picasso. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not abstract, so maybe Monet, but it's like
that's
watching,
the title sorted.
Nick, let's sort of talk about the defence because it's young, it's inexperienced.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember watching a defence so composed at times, yet so ruthless going forwards.
Absolutely,
as well. I mean, talk to me about that. Get purring over that.
So let me purr over our 2 fullbacks. I won't go on too much about it because obviously this is territory that you guys have been over plenty of times and I've heard it.
But never with you.
Well, you're absolutely right in what you say in terms of
how do you get into these, by the way?
Yeah, just use that. I think the thing about
damage that's a fine park.
That was his birthday pen.
Oh, hang on.
It's not a Mont Blanc, but it's.
I'll start. Ben Godfrey. My God.
Yeah.
That performance against Leeds. Wow.
Yeah.
Literally wow.
Though the debate beforehand was, do you, just because of the nature of the Leeds team and the game and the size of the game, do you bring Hanley back in for that game?
Which I was saying.
Oh, were you? Oh, I wasn't. No, I thought go with Godfrey because he's going to grow. And the thing about these young players,
they're chocolate, not the film.
Oh yes, sorry. These young players, they're fearless. And there's something about, I think, youth. Especially when they break through, where they are playing with their heart on their sleeves. Not for me, thank you. And they're playing with their heart on their sleeves, and I think for me, it's the way in which they are playing with this great confidence, which is absolutely tremendous. And there's a winning formula, and when things go your way at Norwich, And also there's always someone there to pick him up. And this is the best thing. When they make a mistake, in the past, usually the ball would have broken to the opposition and we'd be sitting there and we'd be 1-0 down and we'd be swearing. No, they do make mistakes. You know, they're not perfect. Somebody else is in there and they've won it back. And that person's often Buendia. You know, it's often Hernandez. There's someone in there that you wouldn't always naturally expect it would be in a position where they're retrieving the ball. And you're like, bloody hell, here we go again. And then just some of those really clever passes where they're threading it through the eye of a needle and we're in. So and they're giving you everything. They're giving you goals as well, these lads. Though Godfrey's finishing, I think, at the early part when he wasn't brilliant. But, yeah, kind of everything.
Buendia, it reminded me of watching Maddison at the weekend, solely because of the amount he was being kicked, because his feet are simply too quick. Nick mentioned it there, though. Defensively, adds so much to the game as well.
I mean, it's reminded me of the fact that he's born on the same day as Jesus Christ. He is absolutely outrageous. He stinks of 25 to 30 mil. Nick, did you know his birthday is on the 25th of December? I've got you there, old boy, haven't I? Oh, this is going to be off. People will think there's whiskey in these cups of coffee. Oh, you start me now, old boy. Oh dear. Right, anyway, God, I'm actually crying a bit. Emi Buendia.
What's his mother called? Don't tell me it's Mary because I fall off the chair.
Mary Buendia. No, on a serious note, Emi Buendia, outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was fouled, I think it was 3 times in 3 minutes, and he just sat on the floor laughing to himself. He is a Premier League footballer.
Yes, he is.
But he's not relegation fodder in the Premier League.
Yeah.
He's up there. He is
It's
outstanding.
the whole thing's crazy. Just going back to the investment, we've bought through a couple of players in terms of fullbacks and Jamal Lewis, Max Aarons, Buendia, Hernandez. These are players I think we brought to the club for maximum £2 million. Probably less.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the fees actually were for Buendia, but I don't think it was huge. I think it was a small amount of money. And now you're talking 25 million. I think that might be slightly adventurous,
No,
but
it's not.
15 to 20 million, I suppose, isn't. 25 million might be a bit, not for me, thank you. Might be.
Look at you trying to act healthy on camera.
Might be a bit OTT. But even still, a point taken, we're looking at a combined value there of a ridiculous amount of money. So we've put so much. This is the thing about Daniel Farke where he should be applauded. What he's doing on the pitch is brilliant, but their staff have put a huge amount of value on that club as well through their young assets.
And that's, of course, Stuart Webber's role.
It's Stuart Webber's role. Yeah, and actually it's interesting that it continues with these 2 players that we've signed towards the back end of the window from Luton. They're clearly looking for the future. They're clearly saying, 3 players actually. They're clearly saying this is the way we're going. This is the model.
It's not just taking a pot shot on someone like Stephen Naismith and hoping he delivers, is it?
Yeah, with ridiculous wages.
Exactly.
Yeah, or your Matt Jarvis's. Still on our books.
Indeed. Tim Krul, he will be facing no further action from the FA after an investigation with a slight altercation with Patrick Bamford.
Love that.
What do you make of that, Nick, at the end?
Look, if anyone from the FA is watching, I can't swear. I can swear, can't I?
Yeah,
Sort your SHIT. Sorry, I've had a lifetime of not swearing on the radio, so I don't swear. Sort your SHIT out. I don't even know why there was an investigation. I'm assuming that Alioski also faced an investigation, did he, for sticking his hands in one of our players' faces?
I don't know.
I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. So Krul went up at the end of the game.
Are Leeds grassing us up now, are they?
No comment.
Right, so the thing about Leeds is, if the FA are going to even bother to launch an investigation about Norwich City, let's have an investigation about Alioski's hands in one of our players' faces. You've got to balance it up. And also, I know there's a complex in Leeds, that we're always having a crack at Leeds. By the way, I think Leeds are a fantastic club.
Me too.
I think British football is all the richer for Leeds. They've got wonderful fans and they create a brilliant atmosphere in that fantastic stadium. So I've got no agenda against Leeds. But I do think Leeds fans have got to realise that the perception in the wider football community is damaged by incidents like we've had recently with the Spygate. And I think what annoys me is the FA have launched an investigation into Tim Krul squaring up at the end of the match, and if Krul is to be believed trying to split up a bit of a fight which was starting, I'm not quite sure if that's true or not, when Alioski stuck his hand on whose face was
Pookie.
it? Was it Pookie's face?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Pookie, wasn't it? Yeah, Pookie's face in the box.
Two hands.
It was 2 hands. Yeah, it was 2 hands, wasn't it? Straight down to the ground. But yeah.
Chris, I'm not sure what you think of that whole situation, but for me, it almost says to me that Krul is wanting to protect his younger defenders in front of him. He sees himself as a slight father figure.
I love him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to praise him for despite the fact on Chris Reeve, I'm not going to praise him for starting on Bamford, despite the fact that it is Patrick Bamford, and if there was anyone on the pitch I'd want him to start on, it is Patrick Bamford, because he is a fraud of a footballer. But I mean, what I like about Tim Krul is he's an absolute shithouse. but he's our shithouse. The time wasting and everything like that. But it's about time Norwich got a bit nasty. It's about time that someone squared up to you. Don't you dare say that to Ben Godfrey. Let's have some. We're not little old Norwich anymore. You know, let's stand up for ourselves. So I applaud the ethics behind it, the morals, should I say.
Behind fighting.
But I love, what I will say is, Christoph Zimmermann, captain FOD.
Yes.
Straight in there, split them up, maturity, absolutely brilliant. But by the way, Tim Krul, he's been excellent. He's been bloody brilliant.
I get annoyed actually the amount of fans that get on Tim Krul's back. There's one.
Oh really?
Yeah.
There's one guy I know that's leading that charge.
That's why I'm bringing it up. There is one guy. There's one guy who sits. There's a couple of guys who sit behind me. They moan constantly. And there's one slight frustration I think with Krul, and that's just the way that he palms out centrally when actually sometimes I wish he was palming out wide. But it's easy said when I've not played as a goalkeeper. I've not played professional football. Though I love him. I love it. I love the way that he comes out. He almost plays like a sweeper keeper at times. I love the way he's constantly talking to his back line. I like the guy. I know he's not universally popular.
Leader.
He's a leader. He's a strong, I think, wise head.
Imagine him in the dressing room, calming things down.
Yeah.
And that's what you need, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I will be level here. We went to West Brom and we watched him, and his kicking was woeful. It was woeful, but I'm sure he would admit that as well. But since then, he's been excellent.
Yeah.
Right, okay then, getting on to the serious topics now. A big thank you to the EDP for providing the next piece of entertainment. This is what we like to call Who Said It? Nick Conrad or Alan Partridge. So this is Norfolk's finest broadcaster and Alan Partridge. Chris, we need to find who said it. Was it Alan Partridge or was it Nick Conrad?
I'm not allowed to take part in this, am I?
You can answer after Chris.
Right, okay.
Okay, so who said this? After accepting some Slimming World bars from a guest, I'd eaten them in the car, coming through Roughton in the dark, and had covered myself in them. Was that Alan Partridge or Nick Conrad?
Partridge.
Who do you think said that, Mr.
No, I know it's me. I know it's me because.
So talk me through the situation here. You've been given some Slimming World bars from a guest.
From Slimming, yeah, they were absolutely Slimming World. You just said that, haven't you? And they have these little bits on the top, and they're kind of, I think, called Mint Madness. You get this kind of really minty hit, and they look like bloody dust. I said to Emma, "What am I going to do with these?" She said, "Eat them." So I did, and I said, "These are fantastic." I had 3 in one night. That's the problem with that is the problem with those bars.
Did you not have trouble up the river end after that?
I did. No, I didn't. I didn't actually. No, because they're not the laxative. I have had trouble once though with a laxative. I don't want to tell you. Well, I overdosed on Senecot before taking them. Do you want to hear this story?
Nick, there's loads of under 18s watching this podcast.
They never, ever overdose on Senecot. I was taking a long distance flight and I had loads of problems down there. I had 4 pills and it really didn't shift anything, so I took 2 more.
And I was
about 30,000 feet above Karachi and I disgraced myself.
Karachi, oh my God.
Oh dear. Right, next quote, Chris. If you go to London, I guarantee you'll either be mugged or not appreciated. Is that Alan Partridge or Mr. Nick Conrad?
Seeing as I spend a lot of time in London.
I'll say Conrad.
Okay.
No, I'm hugely appreciated in London, so
Okay.
I wouldn't.
So that's Alan Partridge. Chris, you're
So bad.
not doing very well here. Right, next here. I'd like to fly a helicopter all around Norfolk, swoop down over a field, scare a donkey so that it falls into a river.
Nah, that's Partridge.
Yeah,
Definitely not me.
You like donkeys, don't you?
I love donkeys.
Certainly
I
wouldn't
love
endorse.
cows more actually. I love cows.
I do, good. You know what I'd love to be called? Hot. I long to be called hot. It needs to be from someone who really means it, rather than someone trying to appease my narcissism.
100% Conrad stinks of it.
Yeah.
Talk me through this quote then.
Well, I think everyone wants to be called hot, don't they? I think it's fantastic. If someone called me hot, I don't care who they are. Somebody actually the other day in Waitrose, I don't know, Waitrose is not important in this story, but they
Just slip that in there.
I was having a coffee and they said they thought I was very attractive.
Oh wow!
And was it your wife? No, sadly not. But very attractive. I thought that's just a little bit kind of safe. I think someone said, no one says,
hot is all in,
I
isn't
want
it?
to take you to bed, I find you very attractive.
Yeah.
They don't, do they? They say, you're hot. So if I need, But I want to believe they mean it, not that they're just trying to pander to my ego.
Of course. I often see deer. I must be a bit of a deer whisperer. I see them when I'm running, and because I'm light-footed, they don't hear me coming.
Conrad.
Then get startled when they see me. I'm like the Dr. Dolittle of deer.
Well, they've cut the quote actually, because the story that went before
So it is
was
you.
it is me. I was in Sheringham Park and I was having a run and I was desperate for a wee. And so you've got the rhododendrons there. So I went into the rhododendrons because it gives you coverage, and on the other side was this deer. And I just had this moment where I was peeing and this deer was looking at me, and it just wasn't bothered. From me to the camera away, it wasn't bothered by me in the slightest. It just carried on, nuzzled its nose in the ground, had a look at me. And
it had no idea.
It had no idea. It had no idea I wasn't a deer.
So you're light-footed, are you, when you're running?
Well, that's bollocks. I'm not light-footed. You hear me coming from a mile away, but I think it's because I was tiptoeing through the undergrowth at that point, because I wasn't running, because I was obviously weeing.
Oh my God.
Doing the two together.
Right, we're going to do one final quote. Chris, I find it amazing how many people still think the petrol cap on a Ford Focus is on the offside rear.
Partridge.
Indeed, that is Partridge. Actually, one more.
Boom.
Okay, no. One more. I just find it very strange that children who are born when the moon is in a certain part of the system and pull off the tides is at a certain position. That denotes the fact they are going to spend the rest of their lives eating prawns and mussels.
Conrad.
Yeah. I don't understand stars. Don't get it.
You don't get stars?
No, I've got a friend who says that he's Pisces or he's Cancer, so he loves fish. And I don't really understand that just because you happen to be born on a certain day, Jesus' birthday, if you're
Emi
Buendia, that it means that you're going to be one way or another. I don't subscribe to that notion.
Okay. Comment below if you do believe in stars.
Yeah.
Right, let's get on to some Twitter questions now. Ollie Barnard with the first. Do you think Delia would sell up if we go into the Premier League?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Surely it'd be the best opportunity.
It would be the best opportunity because the value of the club would be at its highest at that point. It's interesting, look at Swansea and Hugh Jenkins and what he's gone through recently. He bought that club back in 2002 for £1 million. He sold it for £100 million. I think his share was around £13 million, and now look what's happened. So I think there's lots of warnings there in terms of making sure there's the right investor coming in the club. I don't know the answer to the question. It depends where Delia Smith is at. I think that she probably does want to offload the club. I think we've that's what we understand from what's been said in the past. But I think the great thing about Delia and Michael is that they won't just offload it to anyone. It would have to be the absolute right investment package that comes into the club. And I think having a look at other clubs and the financial models that they have subscribed to and the routes that they've taken, the key thing is, yes, it'd be great to have outside investment. It'd be great to have more money. It'd be great to have financial security. But careful what you wish for. It's got to be the right person.
Indeed. Tom Calden asks, "Hi Nick, do you still think a nationwide vegetable shortage is a laughing matter? Fairly facetious, if so. #icebergs." Now, I'm going to take you back to, I think it was Ray, wasn't it, who called up your show, and there was an iceberg lettuce shortage at the time.
Yeah.
He was going to Tesco's on the Harford roundabout to pick up some icebergs for his mother's birthday party. She loved prawn cocktail.
Yeah.
You laughed.
Yes.
He did not take it well.
No.
What was the end story of Ray?
He got his iceberg lettuce, and she had a lovely birthday party. And I think, if I remember correctly, I did say to my producer, offer to Ray that I'm happy to drive around North Norfolk trying to find him iceberg lettuces, because I thought it would make me look good. So I did, but I didn't in the end. And I think they had a lovely time. So happy birthday to Ray's mum.
Don't say that Radio Norfolk never makes a difference.
Yeah.
Chris asks, Chris, you can answer this one. Who is the best player you've seen Norwich come up against this season?
Oh, that's a good question.
Love the channel, by the way, guys. That's from a Leeds fan.
That's a great question.
Just a name that instantly came up to me was John Fleck.
Mm?
Yeah, I like him.
What,
I love his
in the
energy.
recent Sheffield United game?
Yeah, I think he works hard. I think he works hard off the ball. He's certainly got Robert's energy. And I think he's a great player. He's a workman, isn't he? It's what we love about the Norwich City teams, that they work hard. So he has very much impressed me. Absolutely.
First off, I actually quite like Shea Adams. I think
Yeah.
the way that
Strong.
yeah, really strong. I thought he was a decent player. Didn't have a fantastic game against us. Actually, I know he scored a very good goal, but he didn't have a brilliant game against us. But there was something about him. My eye was watching him.
Indeed. Richard Hancock, your good friend and a friend of the Talk Norwich City podcast. I would like to know which member of the Norwich City squad Nick thinks would be most likely to make a quinoa and puy lentil. Is that correct?
Yeah, puy lentil.
Puy lentil salad for his tea.
Yeah. Richard, dear boy, thank you so much for that. Well, it's obviously going to be. Well, let me answer it in two ways. First of all, I'm probably going to go. Let's go for Onel Hernandez, because the majority of quinoa production in the world is actually in Bolivia, and a small amount of it is in Colombia. Colombia has very good trade routes with Cuba. Cuba is where Hernandez was originally from. So I'm suggesting that probably in terms of quinoa, he would be most exposed to that as a product through family and cultural links. And I would go historically, probably Russell Martin, because he's a vegan.
Nice.
And therefore he probably subscribes and enjoys quinoa. However, very quickly, there are ethical issues around quinoa, so therefore maybe he's not so keen on it. Because,
What's the ethical issues around
well,
quinoa?
it's about Bolivian farmers, and you don't want to go into it, but basically be careful where you source your quinoa from.
Do you buy into the whole kind of quinoa movement?
I do. I love a bit of quinoa, and in Bolivia I loved a bit of quinoa. But there's some interesting stories to tell about quinoa production. But I think Tete would love a bit of quinoa, and pui lentils as well. But I have to say I use a gourmet merchant in the pre-soaked in the bag.
My God,
I wasn't expecting an answer. That
You got one.
That was absolutely excellent. Jez from Bez, who by the way is your biggest fan. Shout out to Jez from Bez. He was the man who.
Hi.
Convinced me that you did actually walk around the North Norfolk coast with podcasts, because I often heard you saying about this, and I was like, surely you don't walk that much. He assures me that you do.
You've been coming into my ears.
sorry, I'm so sorry.
So you've been giving me audio delight at the top of Gun Hill. Sheringham, Cromer Pier.
Beast and Bum.
I've listened to this podcast. I listened to this podcast at Heathrow Airport recently. I've listened to this podcast everywhere, and there's nothing better than walking along the Norfolk coast where you get Soddle signal and listening to you
Let
guys.
us know, actually, if you're watching us on YouTube, let us know in the comments where you've watched or listened to the podcast. There was someone in Saudi Arabia the other day.
Well, can I say hello to
In
Karen?
Dubai.
Karen from Korea. I said I was coming on Talk Norwich City tonight, and she sent me a.
Is her name actually Karen from Korea?
No, she's Karen. I don't think from Korea is her surname, but she's Karen, and she's in Korea, and she loves you too.
Amazing.
Oh, amazing.
She loves you. She's on attachment over there at the moment, and she this is how she follows.
Let us know.
Anyway, Jez's question is, clearly Norwich's scouting network didn't go to Sheringham High School when Nick was on his game. What player would you have been? A midfield general, 20 goals a season striker, a salmon-like leaping keeper? I reckon Nick was a Huck-style flying winger.
Oh, I loved it. Who's this guy?
Jez from Bez.
Jez from Bez, thank you. Actually, there's a very good video. I can't find it, but there was a video. I had a football coach called Jock. Big Scottish guy, huge man actually, very big hands, and he and apparently the story goes, and I can't quite remember this, but I had forgotten to turn up for the match, and the clocks had gone back.
Is this
or
at
forward.
Sheringham High School?
Well, this is at Sheringham United Football Club, or Sheringham, what they call Town Football Club, which I played for when I was younger, and the clocks had gone back or forward. Anyway, I was an hour late, and I turned up in the second half, and he put a video online about it recently, saying I still scored a hat trick. Now I cannot remember that, but actually in my day I wasn't a bad attacking midfielder.
Really?
That's where I used to play.
Really?
Yeah. And the thing is, what I used to do. I mean, this is kids football. Because I'm quite a big chap, and if I drop my trousers now, your eyes would water at the size of my thighs. And I had a very simple tactic. You plough for goal, and then you just boot the hell out of it, and it works every single time.
You strike me as more of a Jens Bertlascu kind of player.
Head the ball into the air and hope for the best. Yeah.
I mean, we're currently sitting in a bedroom, and the thought of you dropping your trousers has slightly put me off track here.
God, you can tell we're top of the league. We've lost the plot.
Indeed, right. Saluting Shrabeni, thank you for your question here. Don't want to get ahead of myself, Chris, but I think we're going to get promoted. Do you think... No, sorry, let me start this again. Don't want to get ahead of myself here, but if we are to get promoted, do you think there are any positions we 100% need to strengthen?
Great question.
The chemistry we have with our current squad doesn't want to be disrupted too much, so I don't think we actually need that many signings.
It's a great question.
Honestly and brutally, I would sign a goalkeeper, and honestly and brutally, I'd still sign another striker. You're not going to disrupt things too much. I would. I mean, obviously we've got Jordan on loan for the season, so definitely 100% a striker. If and when we go to the Premier League.
If we went up to the Premier League, you're not going to sign Jordan Rhodes, are you? No, you're not.
Well,
no, you're not.
Hey, Nick, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
If we go up, I think you're absolutely right. We need a striker. I am sympathetic to what you say about a goalkeeper, actually, though. We're going to need
We're going to need
another goalkeeper anyway. It's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
I think we're going to need another. I think
you don't need to. You don't need to. It would be preferred.
Yes, actually, fair point. I suppose I'm going to cop out on the answer to that one and say actually I think across the board you would generally look for opportunities to improve the squad. That's such a crap answer, and I'm sorry, but
it's like being in the room with David McNally.
I know I'm sorry. That's such a politician's answer, but actually it's very difficult to pinpoint one or two locations, but around the pitch. But I think two things I would do. I'd look to add quality to the squad, and I'd continue with our current strategy, which is to develop youngsters.
It was interesting listening to Russell Martin on Owen Tudor-Jones's podcast recently, and he said the summer where we signed like Leroy Fair, Ricky Van Wolfswijk, all other big sort of money players, the first time we'd done it in a long while, it really did disrupt the dressing room, because suddenly the dynamic shifts and you've got players earning triple what you are. You don't often think about that, do you, from a fan's point of view? Like, well, we've just signed this European striker, amazing. Yeah. But to then fit into the dressing room, that's going to be tough.
I think it's interesting though, because if you take us in comparison to Sheffield United or Leeds have got a very, very young team. They've got a fantastic coach, and he's drilled them very hard on what they are to do. I would be more concerned if I was I like Bielsa. I do not like him.
No, it's just something. No,
I just like the way he just sits on that little puff on the side and starts pointing around. I think he's actually a very, he's a character. He's a character.
We like
characters. I like characters.
We like characters.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock him. If I was a Sheffield United fan, I'd be more concerned, because actually what he's done is a brilliant job at bringing in Championship players and League One players and whipping them up to speed. And I think that they would really struggle. They'll do a Cardiff. They'll really struggle in the Premier League, whereas there's much more about us. The style of play, even last year, I think we all said, the way we're playing is actually more suited to the Premier League than it is to the Championship. So I think there's less we've got to do on our squad. That said, it's like it's like adding into a portfolio, isn't it? Pieces of quality. So it's like Dalton China, porcelain, pieces of quality.
Do you have a China?
No, I'll smash it all probably.
Gus Jarrell,
fat-fingered.
Oh, indeed. No, your fingers are lovely, Nick. As we all know, many of our big key players have attracted interest from big clubs. Do you think we should sell off the likes of Max Aarons or Emi Buendia to make profit in a similar way we did with the Murphys and Maddison, or try and keep hold of everyone? Chris?
I hope not. I know that when we go to the Premier League, we won't get rid of them. I think if we don't get to the Premier League, I do think Jamal will be on his merry way. I think that's why we've signed that player, reading between the lines. And it sounds like Philip Heiss is a very, very well-rounded, well-worked and experienced player. It does say to me that they are needing to top up the pipeline, so to speak, each year, and that's okay. I'm okay with Norwich City becoming a selling club if it means that we can progress and get to the next level. I will be heartbroken if Max Aarons gets sold though, because he is just $1 million.
Yeah,
but that's surely good, isn't it, Nick? That your players are attracting.
Absolutely.
Oh, without doubt. Of course, you want them to attract attention, and I think actually the sad thing is Chris is absolutely right. If we don't go up to the Premier League, those players, many players, will look to go on. A bid will come in, and it will test our resolve. What I think we have to understand as fans, it doesn't just test our resolve because we spy financial security. It's a necessity to sell, because I think we've got a shortfall of £10 million that we've got to cover. So that's one player gone. Beyond that, other players and agents will be saying, look, this player wants to move on, and so therefore it can disrupt the dressing room. So actually, and I hate to say it and put a great emphasis on it, but promotion, if you want to keep this squad together, is a necessity. We have to accept as fans, if we don't get promoted, then players will depart.
Indeed. Liam Palmer, where is Farke's new contract?
Good question.
I am going to make a bold, brave prediction. I think he's already signed it, and I would love it if they announced it after we beat Ipswich at the weekend.
What do you think?
I mean, I'd love that to be true. I think the way in which the club have been talking about it, I'm quite confident that there's a contract in the pipeline, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has already been signed. And the release of that information is being carefully managed by the club. It's a feel-good moment, in the same way as it's a feel-good moment for the Ipswich Town fans to hear that Paul Lambert will be staying if they go down. So I think these little key bits of information that are dripped out to the public, it's great if you can do it at certain times, and I think it's a great time to do it.
It's funny you mentioned Paul Lambert there. It's almost like you've done this before. Do we mock or pity Paul Lambert?
Oh, okay. Do you know what? I think we're football fans, so I see this in two ways. So I'm really looking forward to the banter on Sunday. I really do look forward to it, and I think it can be I'd be nice if people turn up with blue and white coffins, and it would be nice in some way. We could throw lilies at them, and maybe we could wave money at them in their direction. Some of that kind of stuff.
Be careful! They did that, and it didn't end too well.
Well, exactly. I think it's quite witty, but I listen to the podcast called Blue Monday, which is the Ipswich Town podcast. I listen to so many podcasts, and they're nearly all football. And then it's a great podcast. And actually, they were saying they really regret that. I've got a lot of respect for the Blue Monday team, and the way they've told the Ipswich Town story this year is brilliant. And they really regret that. So they were saying they wish they'd never done it. So part of me actually says, we're bigger than Ipswich, and we're bigger than that kind of behaviour.
Yeah.
We're a team that's going places. We can just purr at the way in which we don't need to mock them, because they're sitting in there, they're crying, and actually by throwing something in their direction in terms of banter, we're giving them a reason to be distracted from how awful their team is on the pitch. So if you really want to see them weep, then make them watch the match.
Yeah, I mean,
That's presuming we play them off the park.
Hopefully.
Which will we have to, but yeah.
Look, where I stand on it is, I don't think we need to stoke the fire with Lambert early on. I think that we need to focus on our Norwich City side. By all means, I will be giving the Ipswich fans plenty of grief, as I always do, because they deserve it, because they gave it to us when we went down to League One. So I hope that they enjoy that ride. And I think that at the point where we're winning is when we can press the banter button. But until then, we need all of the noise and all of the support on our team. And by the way, get your scarves out. And if you've not got a scarf, go and buy a scarf.
Yes.
Get involved in the fan march, and let's create the noisiest Carrow Road that we've seen in years.
And those Leeds fans, when they wave those scarves around, it's brilliant. And I love what we're doing.
It was great. Yeah.
It's great if we could do more of that. Just on Paul Lambert, people often say to me, am I frustrated? Of course I'm not frustrated with Paul Lambert. At the end of the day, he wasn't born in Norwich, he wasn't born in Ipswich, he wasn't born in East Anglian. He's a football manager, and he's got every right to go and seek work where he can get work in a very, very difficult. And Paul Lambert at no point has been loyal to anyone, really, maybe apart from Celtic. So I don't expect that of him. But I do thank him for the time that he spent at the club. What I would say, if Paul Lambert had called me before he took the Ipswich job, which he never would have done, but if he had, I'd have told him you're a fool to take it. That, unfortunately...
Well, he was waiting for the Norwich job.
What, to come back again?
Of course he was. Of course he was.
He wouldn't have been given it, though. No, actually, at one stage, I wouldn't have minded seeing him back in the dugout, but those days are gone now.
Finally, let's get to the question that we all want to know. This comes from Dave Rogers on Facebook. Nick, have you tried the Waitrose chicken and herb crusted burger on another level?
Chicken and herb crusted burger?
Yeah.
I haven't, but thank you for the suggestion. I will try it, and I will try and post back on this comment thread to make sure that I give you full and frank feedback.
Good. Very good. Let's move on to previewing the big game. It's Sunday. It's Norwich versus Ipswich. I want to read the first little extract from Stuart Watson's piece on the East Anglian Daily Times. He says, opposite ends of standings, a 39-point gap between the teams. Their leading goal scorer, Timu Pukki, has nearly scored as many goals as the entire town squad has managed all season. Ugh, wake me up when the season ends. How did it come to this? Damning words, Nick, but the gap has probably never been bigger.
The gap has never been bigger. Let's just go on how did it come to this, because I think that's the key point.
Nick, it's not a gap though, is it? We need a better word, and you are the wordsmith.
Chasm.
What is it? I think it's more than that.
I can't think what's bigger than a chasm.
It's a gaping something, but it's
a gaping chasm.
Yeah, it's a gaping
chasm between the two. I think, how's it come to this? It's come to this actually because I think Ipswich have... I don't think they've got any direction. I don't think they've got a plan. I think.
Well, a new era.
Well, this new era is rubbish, though, isn't it? It was media puff, and there's nothing that's come of it. And actually, what I would say about Paul Lambert, he's playing an interesting game. He's a great motivator, and they're saying that he's injected some positivity into the club. Though, if I was a fan, I think I would just get a bit bored of we're playing better than we've ever played before.
We're
playing teams off
that?
Of course you can. It's so transparent.
It's a bull, isn't it?
To the point, actually, I've got lots of Ipswich Town fans, though they're not saying this to me, but I actually think it's quite insulting because they've been to these games. I've seen Ipswich quite a lot this season, and I'm telling you, they're crap.
That game at Villa, where he just blatantly lied.
Well, I was speaking
to the camera.
But their fans have seen a lot. Ipswich Town fans do know what they're watching, and I think actually it insults their intelligence to keep saying how fantastic it is when clearly it's crap.
I think I was speaking to Benjamin Bloom from the Blue Monday podcast on Saturday, and he was saying, I think they can all see through that they're not playing good football, but what Paul Lambert has done there is create a certain feel-good factor about the club again. And a culture around it. I mean, he's bringing legends back. I think he's saying the right things. But how long does that last?
But from the pits of despair and desperation...
It's just marketing, Jack.
It is marketing. But do you know, one thing I would say to Ipswich fans and friends is I think now you have to come to the realisation that Mick McCarthy wasn't the disaster that you presented him to be.
But do you want to be watching that football every week?
No, I would have problems with that. But then you know very well that I talk about football in a practical and business and quite cold way, that sometimes you do have to go down that route because with what you've got and the investment package you've put on the table, that's the best that you can hope for. And that's where Ipswich are at the moment. But what frustrates me slightly with the Ipswich fans is they absolutely hounded and knocked that man out of that club. And he departed and he left, and somewhere in Ireland he is absolutely pissing himself, laughing, I should imagine.
He's not the only one.
And he's not, well, some of us are only up there 140 and we're wetting ourselves on a weekly basis. I'm bloody loving it. I mean, when that goal went in, was it Lucas João scored in the last minute, I jumped off the sofa because it's funny. Because it's funny, and because even though it's sad and I feel sorry for it, I don't like kicking Ipswich fans massively, actually. But
I mean,
yeah,
Darren Huckabee said on this very podcast just 2 weeks ago he doesn't want to see Ipswich go down. Do you
well,
agree with that?
I saw that. Now, well, look, ask me the question.
Do you want Ipswich Town?
Absolutely. Of course I do. I'd love to see them in the Vauxhall Conference.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've been in...
Conrad.
Darren Huckabee is a Norwich City player, legend, whatever you want to call him, who was born where? I'm not making a big thing out of this, but Coventry, wherever he was born.
Yeah.
Love the guy. I think he's great. Nottingham. I think he's great. But there is a difference when you have been... Listen, when you've got that blinking bus from Sheringham, aged however high you are, your first game was 1994. You've followed that team for that long, and that rivalry between these two clubs. It is in your DNA. And if someone rang me up and they said you could buy Ipswich Town for £1, I'd find it very hard to give them the £1, even though it might be a fantastic opportunity, because I'm Norwich through and through. Do I want to see Ipswich go down? I bloody love it. I feel sorry for them on a human level.
Nick, I'm so pleased you've said that. But what I would say, and I get what Hux is saying, and we talk about this from the supporter point of view and how we act around Paul Lambert, I do agree with Hux that we do need to be bigger than it.
I agree
because
entirely.
it will come to bite us in the bum. And
of course it will.
And actually, I think that the club, the type of club that Norwich is, I think that we probably will be.
Yeah.
Of course, there'll be some banter. Of course, there will be. But I sincerely hope it's when we've absolutely ruined them.
And one thing I would say to Ipswich fans as well, and I really appeal for this, is no more trouble like we saw last time round, because there are bigger things than in football. And the key thing I'd say to Ipswich fans is this: if you actually listen to fellow Ipswich fans who feel very passionately about the club, who are in a very difficult place at the moment, you let them down more than anything by behaving in like animals and trashing the inside of our stadium. So I really hope that this passes off peacefully, which it nearly always does. It's a great derby match and actually doesn't cause that many problems for the police.
Chris, James Collins and Luke Chambers, Ipswich's centre-back partnership.
Are they going to be out for this one?
Well, they were both injured at the weekend. Collins has a hamstring injury. I don't really know what they expected of signing a 35-year-old who had to tear up his Aston Villa contract because of injuries. And Luke Chambers, of course, who I think has fist pumped twice this season, or maybe 3 times over their wins. Look, I think we're always nervous going into a derby match, but we have to beat them, surely.
Well, sorry.
No, you go, mate.
Okay, 2 things on that.
These chocolates are very good, by the way.
Just keep going, honestly, because they're 2 a penny. I can buy you more. It's not Fortnum and Mason.
BBC are paying too much.
And I don't actually like Fortnum and Mason chocolates. Anyway, sad about James Collins because he's got the most beautiful shaved head and the ball makes a lovely noise when it ricochets off it. That's all I've got to say about him. Moving on.
There's only one Ginger Pelle, isn't there? And that's Gary Doherty.
Yes, that's true. I think the frustration I have with this game is I'm always nervous about it, and actually arrogance and complacency and maybe slightly the way that we're talking tonight makes me uneasy. I think that it's one of those games where on their day, Ipswich could still beat us. They can get up for this game. And I bet you Paul Lambert is slapping them on the legs as they leave that dressing room and saying, go and get at them. And the key thing about this for Ipswich, and we need to understand this, and Daniel Farker needs to get on top of this one, I'm sure he is that for them, in their desperate situation at the moment, 8 points off, and potentially with Rotherham at home to Wigan at the weekend, 11 points off when they kick off this game, then he will say, they'll often be thinking, last chance. Go out, get at them. And if they get 3 points against us, especially if that gap is narrowing and Rotherham don't do particularly well in that game over Wigan, then that actually might be the catalyst that actually starts a run into the end of the season. There's still 48 points to play for here, and I think Ipswich fans would see that and say, we've had the most shocking season, but that would be a point where you could really start to mentally use that. So do not underestimate how valuable Ipswich and Paul Lambert and the likes of his backroom team will think this game is.
But I think it can't. I think it actually casts. I think that will actually affect them more because I think it will cast some serious nerves because they will all know, realistically, it's last chance saloon. If they don't beat Norwich City Football Club, they will be ruined. They'll be done.
If you were
They've already been told behind the scenes to prepare for relegation, Nick.
Yes,
If they lose against Norwich City, their heads are down and they're budgeting for League One.
If you were an Ipswich fan, would you travel up to this game?
No way.
I wouldn't even touch this game.
No way.
I really wouldn't even.
I'd turn off Twitter, turn off the TV, turn off BBC Radio Suffolk.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah, I love BBC Radio Suffolk. I wouldn't turn that off because it's been an absolute joy. I mean, I've never run back to my car quick enough to get back in, and people think I'm listening to Canary. It's Radio Suffolk.
Yeah.
And honestly, the phone in is just fantastic. It's caller after caller every single week, and they're so depressed. They're so depressed.
It's nothing like a bit of Schadenfreude.
Well, I'd like to go down there and like just pretend to be a psychiatrist and just counsel them.
On a serious note, though, Ipswich will come and fight.
Yes, they will.
And let's not be idiots here. But what I will say is that here's the matter of the fact: if we play like we played against Leeds, who, by the way, their game plan was arguably, if it doesn't work in the first half, we'll kick the shit out of you in the second half and dive and cheat and foul and do all of that scummy rubbish. That's exactly what Ipswich are going to do. All of the pressure is on Norwich. Simple as that. This is Norwich's game to lose, which was the opposite at Leeds United. It was Leeds' game to lose, and arguably the nerves got the better of them. When that deflected free kick went in from Mario Vancic, which by the way was going in anyway, they were done because it was pressure. Yeah. And I do think that the first goal at Carrow Road on Sunday will be pivotal.
Nick, you mentioned there about if Ipswich were to win this, it could be the catalyst to change their season. I don't feel like if Norwich were to lose this, for example, it would derail us. I feel like we're mentally stronger than that.
I think the great thing about Norwich is that, let's say we had a major setback and we'd be very disappointed because it's against Ipswich. In a funny way, I kind of think that would motivate us to even go to push on even stronger, because that's how we've used defeats in the past. So I agree with you entirely. I think the problem is this weekend, there is something about being a Norwich fan. We want to get one up over on Ipswich. And the interesting thing is, having, for me personally, followed Norwich City and having a great period at the beginning of being on top of Ipswich, then there's quite a long period of us being quite even, and then sadly a period where they were more dominant than us. We've now gone, I think it's going to be a decade of not losing. So there are kids that I sit with who have never seen Norwich City lose against Ipswich. And I would just absolutely love, seeing as I'm pretty sure now that they're going down, and there's a good chance we're going up, I'd just like to preserve that for a little bit longer. And there is a chance, getting out of League One's not that easy. Staying in the Premiership's not that easy, but there's a good chance these teams could be just diving apart for a couple of years here.
Let's enjoy it though. I don't think Norwich City fans should be let's embrace the occasion. Let's make some noise, because seriously, banter aside, this could honestly be the last derby for 2, 3, maybe even 4 seasons.
I saw Mick Dennis tweet that he thinks this will be the last derby of his lifetime.
Hello. I knew
because he thinks they're not going to come back up again, or he thinks
we're
we're staying up in the problem with Ipswich. Now, this is not about Ipswich, but it's about Norwich. But the problem with Ipswich is, I think that the situation they're in, their ownership model, the lack of investment, yada yada yada, means that they will potentially find it very difficult to get out of League One. And for every Sheffield United...
Well, they're not down yet.
They're not down yet, no, exactly. They're not down yet. And I think we should make that very clear. And Lambert's a very good manager. We know how good he is. They're not down yet, you're right. But for every...
He was a good manager. He's not a good manager now.
I think he is still a good manager, actually.
Oh, come on, Nick.
No, he did a...
Nick, get over yourself.
He did a fantastic
job.
job.
Since Norwich?
Well, that's
kept Villa afloat,
and that's a hell of a job.
Well, he had
that's a hell of a job.
Mate, he had Benteke up front for him.
Chrissy, that's a hell of a job. That's a hell of a job to keep Aston Villa up.
Nicky, he had Benteke up front.
When I disagree with someone, they put a Y on the end of their name because it's more impactful. But I think that's a difficult. He's a good manager. But you're right, they're not down yet. But for every single Norwich City or there's a Charlton, even Southampton were languishing down there for a while. Sheffield United languishing. It's a hard league to get out of. They're going down and they could be sinking, and I ain't going to float them any raft.
I think that's a lovely note to end on. It's the East Anglian derby this Sunday. Any last words from you two?
Go and get at them.
Yeah. I just, honestly, every single Norwich City fan that's listening to this on iTunes, SoundCloud, everyone that's watching this on YouTube, you need to get behind the boys. Sing, actually sing. I know that we're getting better, but actually sing for 90 minutes, full stop. Even if we go a goal behind, we have to do our job in this game. You cannot sit in your seat and not get behind the boys for this game.
Can I make another point? I think you're absolutely spot on. And the other thing is, we are the 12th man. We do need to make some noise, and we need to make sure that noise is right the way around the ground. And there's something else that I think Norwich City fans need to do better. And that is when we see things like a player going down in the box and you think there's half a chance of a penalty, shout penalty, go for it, create a bit of atmosphere. Because I've seen decisions sway on that. And I just think sometimes we're just a little quiet. We need to... Someone goes down and then 20 seconds later, there's a reaction from the crowd. That's a bit OTT, I know. But I think we can be much hotter on creating that reaction. I think Chris is absolutely spot on. Make some noise. Really bloody enjoy where we're at the moment, because if we do go up next year, I bet you this time next year when I'm sitting in this chair, we'll be saying, oh, it's difficult in the Premier League, isn't it? So just enjoy it while it lasts. Really enjoy this.
Embrace it, but don't do anything silly. Nothing is more serious than that.
Look after yourselves and each other.
And get to the march, pre-match.
Yeah. Where's that starting?
Wetherspoons. Riverside.
Queen.
That's the wrong direction for me. I've got to walk all the way past the ground and march back to it.
Oh, come on. Get there, Nick. I want to see you leading it at the front. No excuses. With 2 flares in your arms.
With my top off.
Yes.
Goodness, yeah.
Yeah, to reveal your canary tattoo that you've got here.
I think I look like a seal at the moment. I looked at myself naked in front of the mirror the other day. I thought I daren't swim in the North Sea. I look like a bull seal. I do. Especially when I've got my shaved head as well. I'll be surfing around in the waves and I'll probably get some kind of frightful shot when
David Whiteley surfs by.
I'd rather it's David Whiteley than some amorous grey seal who thinks
I'm mating with you.
Yes, I'll take my chances.
Oh, God.
Great to see you.
Nick,
Great to see you both. Great to see you both.
Good to see you,
Oh,
mate.
man.
Subscribe. See you later. Bye-bye.
I love doing this with you guys.
Christ,